welcome back to A Greener York. We are talking about protection and revitalization of green spaces today on the show. And when we left for a break, Gary, you were talking about a bit about development and protecting green spaces. So how much green space do we need? How much is a good amount to have for a healthy ecosystem?
Well, that's the $64 million question.
Okay.
We're often asked that question, how much is enough? How much is enough green space? And it really depends to a large extent on the lens or the objective that you're trying to meet. So for example, our scientists who work with lots of other partners, when they've tried to determine how much is enough for the terrestrial natural heritage system, they've come up with 30%. If we could reach a minimum of 30% natural cover across our region, the form and function of the terrestrial natural heritage system would be in pretty good shape. But that's just a target for sort of the ecology question. There are also the social benefits as well. So how much green space do we need to satisfy some of our social needs? We all love parks, we love going to parks, but how much is enough to satisfy those needs? So when you look around the country, some people are advocating 20% of an urban area for those social benefits, or some people are advocating 20 hectares per 1,000 people as a benchmark. And other municipalities, and some of the municipalities I know in York Region, they often use a benchmark of having publicly accessible green space within a 5 or a 10-minute walk of the majority of the residents. That's what they would consider the answer to the question.
Okay.
So it depends on what objective you're really trying to achieve.
Right.
And I think the jury is still out on some of those various aspects, some of the social components as to how much is enough, but those are some of the benchmarks we currently use.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Andy, Earth Rangers has a really cool project going on called iRestore. Can you tell me a bit about what you're doing there?
We focused mostly on the land around the Earth Rangers Center. We've done a lot of work to try and show what can be done with a building with our headquarters to really operate with the smallest environmental footprint as possible, to really show kids and all of our stakeholders that we're walking the talk, so to speak. So we did a survey of the land surrounding the Earth Rangers Center and found that about 90% of the surface area was covered with invasive species. So we thought we really needed to do something about that. So Project iRestore is an ecological restoration project that will take this land that's primarily old meadow now and covered with invasive species like common buckthorn and the Russian olive tree, for example, and turn it back into more recognizable native habitats such as tall grass prairie, deciduous forest, and wetland.
And how are you doing that?
So what we've done is we basically did what's called a prescribed burn, where we burnt off all of the weed mass, if you want to call it that, and we're going to replant with those native species and steward them along like what would more have naturally occurred instead of the deciduous forest having been cleared at some point in the past. So we're really trying to take it back to a more biodiverse state. That's a really good area to protect the animals and increase the level of biodiversity as opposed to where it stands right now.
And why are the grasslands so important?
Because of the diversity of species. It's not just the grassland, it's the wetland, it's the deciduous forest next to it. We want to take this opportunity to educate kids. We've engaged the University of Guelph and York University to do some science-based education and curriculum based around this restoration project. It's really important for us to show these kids that we can do this on a smaller scale, and that this model can be replicated in other areas of Southern Ontario. So it's not just confined to the 20 or so acres that we're focused on, but it really could snowball, for lack of a better term, into something a lot bigger.
How did the burn go?
It went very well.
Okay.
It was a little bit windy on the day of, and I think we may have concerned some of the neighbors with some of the smoke, but it went very well. Tallgrass Ontario and wildfire specialists were there to steward the process. The fire department was there, so it was very professionally done. It was very safe, and it was still pretty amazing to see some 8-foot flames in the fields as the invasive species were taken care of by the fire.
Wonderful. And Janet, what is the importance of urban forests?
Well, urban forests exist where we live in our communities. It's the street trees along, our streets, the trees in our backyards, the trees in our small community parks. They're so important to our quality of life. They give us shade, oxygen, they clean our air, they reduce stormwater. They slow the rain as it falls and they absorb it. So we're actually then having to pay less as a municipality to move and treat our stormwater. They save us money. They increase our property values. They provide a home for the wildlife that we live with. I could go on. They do so much. And I think oftentimes, you know, again, it's a bit of a patchwork. We have communities that have old trees that have a significant canopy. So there are some areas, Unionville comes to mind, in Markham, where we've got old trees. Some communities have literally hardly any trees at all, often new developments.
What's the importance of this canopy?
The importance? Well, like I said, all of those benefits that it provides us. And you asked about how much green space is enough. And as Gary mentioned, there have been some targets that have been sort of set, 30 to 40% in terms of urban forest canopy cover is often talked about. But I think the more the better is really the answer to that question. The more that we can have, I think the better quality of life we have. And when we live in an urban environment, we really crave those interactions with nature, and we need those as human beings. We can't live in a concrete jungle and be happy. So I think we all have to do our part and protect what we have, try to restore in places where we can, and we all have an opportunity to do that right in our own communities.
And why do we need more native species?
Well, native species are so important because they evolved here. They weren't brought over from somewhere else, some other continent. They evolved here. They belong here. They support the most wildlife habitat. They are the most resilient. They can tolerate our climate and so on. So once established, for example, you have to get the right tree in the right place. You still have to consider soil, light, space, all of these things when you're planting. But I think once established, they can really exist with very minimal maintenance. And I think that's important.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to chirp in, I guess, on the urban forest canopy question by saying that most or many of the municipalities in the region have recognized the utmost importance, not only to look at our rural ecosystems and our rural forest cover, but the important role that Janet has mentioned for the urban canopy. So York Region, I believe, is a partner along with the City of Vaughan, other municipalities to all get a handle on it.
I have to cut you off there, but thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. That wraps up our segment for our program. I would like to thank my guests for being on the show. After the break, arborist and area forester James Lane will be joining me in the studio to talk about the emerald ash borer that is threatening to decimate an entire species of tree here in York Region. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.